Midterms descended on campus like a particularly aggressive storm front. Suddenly everyone's conversations shifted from weekend plans to caffeine intake statistics and the relative merits of all-nighters versus microsleeps. The library transformed from a place of casual browsing to a battleground where students fought silent wars over outlet access and prime study real estate. "I'm pretty sure that guy hasn't moved in 3 days," Zoe whispered, nodding toward a bearded economics major who'd colonized the corner table with a fortress of textbooks. "I've been leaving snacks near him like you would for a feral cat." "Humanitarian efforts in crisis zones," I agreed, spreading my own materials across our hard-won table. Professor Rivera's midterm project specifications loomed on my laptop screen, a deceptively brief document containing expectations that might as well have required reconstructing the Sistine Chapel using only crayons and good intentions. "How's the project with Vivian going?" Zoe asked, highlighting an entire page of her literature textbook neon yellow. "Surprisingly well," I admitted. "Once we established a communication system that works, me sketching concepts, her critiquing with surgical precision, repeat until bleeding stops, we've made progress." "And the mysterious Marcus?" Zoe wiggled her eyebrows suggestively. "Still having artistic encounters in dimly lit galleries?" Heat rushed to my face. Since the Lighthouse exhibition 2 weeks ago, Marcus and I had maintained a tentative friendship, occasional texts about art exhibitions, brief coffee run-ins that seemed simultaneously coincidental and not, and one memorable afternoon when he'd shown me the century-old darkroom hidden in the photography department basement. "We're friends," I insisted. "He's just interesting to talk to." Zoe's skepticism could have powered a small city. "That explains why you check your phone every 3 minutes and why you started using proper punctuation in texts." "I've always used proper punctuation," I protested. "You once sent me dinner ? Without any actual punctuation." "That was efficient communication." "That was linguistic crime." She snatched my phone as it lit up with a notification. "Speak of the photogenic devil." I retrieved my phone with as much dignity as possible. Marcus's text read, "Darkroom free until 5. Developing Harbor series if you want to see process. No pressure." "The no pressure is adorable," Zoe commented, reading over my shoulder. "As if you wouldn't rearrange continents to watch him develop film." "It's an educational opportunity," I said primly, already packing my books. "Rivera encourages cross-disciplinary exploration." "Is that what the kids are calling it these days?" I ignored her, shouldering my bag. "Keep my seat. I'll be back in a couple hours." "Take your time," she called after me. Some educational opportunities require thorough exploration. The photography department basement existed in perpetual twilight, illuminated by amber safety lights that transformed everything into a sepia-toned alternate reality. I navigated the labyrinthine hallways with increasing familiarity, following the faint sound of music until I reached the main darkroom. I knocked on the door, waited for Marcus's "come in," then carefully entered the space, mindful not to let in outside light. The room's red safety lights cast everything in dramatic shadows, including Marcus, who stood bent over a developing tray, sleeves rolled up and gloved hands carefully manipulating paper in chemical solutions. "Just in time," he said without looking up, the ghost of a smile in his voice. "First prints are just starting to appear." I moved closer, watching as images gradually materialized on the white paper. A transformation that never lost its magic no matter how many times I witnessed it. The Harbor series Marcus had mentioned featured haunting shots of boats at dawn, morning mist creating a dreamlike quality. "These are incredible," I said, leaning in for a better look. "The way you've captured the light through the fog." "They're studies for my senior portfolio," Marcus said, carefully transferring a print to the next tray. "Dad thinks they're too atmospheric and not technically impressive enough." The reference to Dr. Westfield was casual but carried weight. Since witnessing their argument in the courtyard, I'd noticed how Marcus mentioned his father, always briefly, always with a constructed casualness that somehow emphasized the tension rather than diminishing it. "I think they're perfect," I offered. "They capture feeling, not just technical skill." Marcus glanced at me with that half-smile that made my stomach do embarrassing gymnastics. That's exactly what I'm going for. The technical aspects should serve the emotion, not the other way around. He demonstrated each step of the process, explaining chemical ratios and timing with the precision of someone who'd mastered the science but maintained reverence for the art. When he asked if I wanted to try developing one myself, I hesitated only briefly before accepting. "I'll guide you through it," he promised, standing close behind me as I lowered paper into the first solution. His proximity was distracting, the faint scent of his aftershave mingling with darkroom chemicals, the warmth of him just inches away, his voice low and steady near my ear as he instructed. I forced myself to focus on the print emerging beneath my fingers rather than how easily I could have leaned back against him. "Perfect timing," he murmured as I transferred the print. "You have good instincts for this." The compliment shouldn't have affected me as much as it did, but something about Marcus's validation carried weight. Unlike Vivian's grudging acknowledgments or Professor Rivera's demanding expectations, his recognition felt pure, one artist appreciating another. We worked in comfortable silence, developing several more prints until Marcus checked his watch. I promised to meet Tyler for dinner at 6 to review his thesis film cuts. "Want to join?" He mentioned bringing Chinese food. And here was the dilemma that had been recurring since our lighthouse conversation. Invitations that blurred the line between academic colleagues, friends, and something undefined that made my heart beat faster. Each time, I overthought the implications until the moment passed or circumstances decided for me. "I should probably get back to studying," I said regretfully. "Midterms and all." "Right, of course." Was there disappointment in his tone, or was I projecting? "Another time." As we hung the final prints to dry, Marcus carefully labeled each one with photographer's notes. "By the way," he said casually, "the Brennan Gallery downtown is hosting their annual Emerging Artists Showcase next Friday. I have a couple pieces in it." "That's amazing," I said, genuinely impressed. The Brennan was a legitimate commercial gallery, not a student space. "Thanks." He hesitated, focusing intently on his labeling. "The opening has the usual pretentious wine and cheese situation. I'm supposed to bring a +1, but Tyler's filming that night, and frankly, I'd rather have someone there who actually understands the work rather than random gallery socialites my father would suggest." My brain struggled to process what seemed like an invitation buried in context. "Sounds stressful," I offered lamely. Marcus looked up, meeting my eyes in the darkroom's red glow. "It would be less stressful with a friend there." "Friend?" The words simultaneously warmed and disappointed me. "Sure," I said, aiming for casual. "I come for moral support." "Great." The relief in his voice was palpable. "It's fairly formal, one of those events where my father insists on appropriate presentation of the Westfield image." His impression of Dr. Westfield was startlingly accurate. "Formal as in?" "Suit and tie, unfortunately," Marcus grimaced. "I know it's ridiculous, but gallery politics and all that." Panic flared instantly. My wardrobe consisted primarily of thrift store finds and paint-splattered everything. The nicest thing I owned was the button-down shirt I'd worn to my college interview, which wasn't exactly gallery opening caliber. "I might not have," I began. "Leo mentioned he's the same size as you," Marcus interrupted, somehow anticipating my concern. "He's offered to help with wardrobe if needed. No pressure. You'd be doing me a favor just by being there." I tried to process the fact that Marcus had apparently discussed this with Leo before asking me, which meant he'd been planning this invitation rather than spontaneously extending it. "I'll be there," I promised, trying to ignore the flutter in my chest at his obvious relief. "You agreed to what?" Zoe stared at me over her laptop. Back at the library, I'd barely settled into my seat before blurting out the gallery invitation situation. "It's just moral support," I insisted. "As friends." "Right," she drawled. "Friends who specifically seek each other out, who text constantly, who look at each other like they're trying to memorize each other's faces. Totally platonic." "It's not like that," I protested, though my burning face suggested otherwise. "Eliot," Zoe set aside her laptop with the air of someone preparing for a serious intervention. He specifically asked Leo about lending you clothes before inviting you. He's been planning this. That's not a casual friend invite. Or it means he knew I wouldn't have fancy clothes and was being considerate. Marcus Westfield could have asked literally anyone on campus to be his +1 at a prestigious gallery opening, she pointed out. He chose you. Connect the very obvious dots. Before I could respond, my phone vibrated with an email notification from Professor Rivera. Chin, see me tomorrow, 2 p.m. Your midterm concept needs discussing. Rivera. My stomach dropped. Rivera's discussions were infamous for their brutal honesty. Students emerged from her office either creatively reborn or academically decimated. What's wrong? Zoe asked, noticing my expression. Rivera wants to see me about my midterm project, I said, scanning the terse email again. Is that bad? It's either very good or catastrophically bad, I admitted. There's no middle ground with Rivera. Zoe reached across the table to squeeze my hand. Your work is amazing. She probably wants to feature it or something. I appreciated the sentiment, but anxiety still churned in my stomach. The midterm project with Vivian was technically solid but felt safe, competent execution of Rivera's assignment without the emotional vulnerability that distinguished truly exceptional work. The realization hit me suddenly. I was approaching my art the same way I was approaching my friendship with Marcus, cautiously maintaining distance to avoid potential pain. Professor Rivera's office reflected her artistic philosophy, every item purposefully placed, the negative space between objects creating its own meaningful composition. She sat reviewing my midterm sketches, expression unreadable. Your technical execution with Cruz is excellent, she finally said, looking up. The concept demonstrates clear understanding of negative space principles. Relief washed through me. Thank you. It's also completely soulless, she continued, like watching a skilled surgeon operate without understanding why the patient needs saving. The relief evaporated. I don't understand. Your application portfolio showed promise because it contained emotion, messy, imperfect, genuine emotion. She tapped my current sketches dismissively. This is technically impressive but emotionally vacant. You're hiding. Her assessment struck uncomfortably close to my earlier realization. I'm not hiding, I protested weakly. I'm just focusing on craft. Craft without vulnerability is just decoration, Chin. Rivera leaned forward. Art that doesn't risk anything isn't worth making. What are you suggesting? Your project with Cruz can proceed as is, she said. But I'm assigning you additional work, a personal piece exploring what you're most afraid to reveal. Due with your midterm, presented separately. Panic flared. That's not what was in the syllabus. Neither is coasting on technical skill while insulating yourself from real artistic growth, she countered. You're capable of more. Prove me right. I left her office with equal parts indignation and uncomfortable self-awareness. Rivera had identified the same pattern I'd recognized in myself, the careful distance I maintained, whether in art or relationships. Back at the apartment, I found Zoe and Leo engaged in what appeared to be a fashion consultation, with various formal wear items spread across our living room. Perfect timing! Leo exclaimed upon seeing me. Emergency gallery attire meeting in session. I might have mentioned your wardrobe crisis, Zoe admitted. It's not a crisis, I protested. Your fanciest shirt has paint molecules embedded at the quantum level, Zoe pointed out. It's a crisis. Leo held up a tailored navy blazer. Fear not, I come bearing gifts. Now, there's something critical we need to establish before proceeding. My measurements? Yes. No, Leo said seriously. We need to establish whether this is a date. It's not a date, I insisted automatically. It's a friend helping another friend by attending a stressful work event. Zoe and Leo exchanged skeptical glances. What? I demanded. Nothing, Leo said innocently. Just that Marcus has never invited any of his other friends to gallery events requiring formal attire. Not even Tyler, Zoe added. Tyler has been to plenty of his shows, I pointed out. But never as the designated +1, Leo countered. That spot has historically been reserved for family members or whatever socialite his father is trying to network with. I absorbed this information, trying not to let it feed the hope I'd been trying to suppress. Regardless, I said firmly, I need to look presentable. And I have an additional Rivera assignment to worry about. I explained Rivera's critique and demand for a more vulnerable piece. She's right, you know, Zoe said gently. You do keep people at a distance. Even us, sometimes. I do not, I protested, but the words sounded hollow even to me. You do it in your art and in life, she persisted. You observe everything and everyone with incredible insight, but you rarely let yourself be observed in return. Leo nodded agreement. The number of times you've deflected personal questions with humor is basically a statistical study at this point. Their assessment was uncomfortably similar to Rivera's. Fine, I conceded. Maybe I have some minor trust issues. And maybe facing those through your art isn't the worst idea, Zoe suggested, while looking devastatingly handsome at a gallery opening with your not date. Leo held up the blazer again. Speaking of which, try this on. If we're going to have an emotional breakthrough, we might as well look fabulous doing it. As I slipped on the blazer, which fit surprisingly well, I found myself caught between exhilaration and terror. The gallery invitation, Rivera's challenge, my friend's observations, all pushed me toward the same uncomfortable truth. I couldn't keep maintaining safe distances if I wanted to grow, either as an artist or as a person. The question was whether I was brave enough to close those distances, knowing that proximity always carried the risk of pain.